actually reach out to the community and say this will happen?
I think the time is now. Clearly, as the Congressman said earlier, the DOD and the President are going to request another round of BRAC. When that happens, yet to be determined, but the fact that it's being talked about is certainly an indication that we need to begin to put together the structure to be able to respond. But the other thing that's important to remember in all of this is we live in an incredibly dangerous and complex world. Up until about 3 or 4 weeks ago, national security strategy was we're pivoting to the Pacific, this phrase, and I'm sure some of you have heard that. That's still going to happen. President Obama is in Asia as we speak, trying to help people understand that the United States is really going to be there to help protect them in the Pacific region. But then, lo and behold, we have an issue come up in Russia, where now military resources and assets are now being reevaluated in terms of where we are going to position things. All of that is to say our national security is a moving target, and that we as communities who care about our national security and the installations in our communities need to be continually vigilant and aware of what's going on and be ready to react and respond very quickly and on a moment's notice.
You raised the specter of pivot to the Pacific, and there's consideration of consolidating and closing down military operations currently in Europe. I'd like to turn the next question over, turn a little bit to Charlie Giacchi and Admiral Montoya to talk a little bit about what kind of opportunities could there be going forward for actually expanding military presence in the Pacific and possibly Ventura County. And if you could eliminate, what can the state do, maybe the Governor's Military Council, the Governor, the Congressional Delegation, the legislature, what can the state do to begin that process, and what can we as a community do to begin that process to take advantage of these potential opportunities, not just the threat of BRAC, but the potential opportunities of expansion via the pivot to the Pacific.
Let me speak to that which I still have some expertise and knowledge. If I were in active duty today, I would be concerned with the continued existence of 2 CP bases. We went up to 9 battalions because of the 2 wars overseas. Because of the drawdown, we're down to 6 battalions. 3 at each of the bases, Gulfport and here. Gulfport is not as complex a base as Port Hueneme is, because we are part of a larger complex and we have a port that's at the ready. And so, to the extent that there were a BRAC, I wouldn't be surprised if those 2 bases were set to compete against each other. And I think our community ought to be thinking in terms of, the lady raised the specter over here, from her perspective, the issues with the military and the activity in the military base and its impact in the community. I think if that argument were to become a major argument, I can guarantee you that Gulfport would say, bring those 3 Hueneme battalions over here, and we will take them in a heartbeat, and we'll do all these things for them. Even though there may be some issues here, I think we need to expand our thinking a bit and be prepared to argue that we can absorb the activities of 3 more battalions. We've had many more than that over the years, I assure you. And how would you do that? And be prepared to argue strategically and tactically. That's one area that I think is ripe for discussion in the Department of Defense, and one that we should be anticipate here and be prepared to open our arms and offer it up, so to speak.
I think there's lots of room for growth in terms of supporting the pivot to the Pacific. We specifically thought about another carrier in San Diego as an example, along with another carrier airway, which means more crews up here in Port Hueneme. You can envision more LCS ships. Maybe envision home porting an LCS ship in Port Hueneme, as an example. The growth in UASs in terms of fire scout, So I think I think California is poised to accept that growth, but it's back to the budget question. With or without a BRAC, if we continue under sequestration, my personal view is a silent BRAC will start to happen. And programs will be shifted and programs will be realigned as DOD tries to operate within their budget constraints. If they don't get a BRAC, they're going to have to operate however they can. So I think the key is follow the money. The money is extremely important in what ultimately gets done with the money. But I think California could be poised to grow with the Pacific.
Maybe Bruce, talk a little bit about the business community. Is this an issue that comes to your board, or is this an issue that is raised at your membership?
Sure. Not nearly, of course, with the specificity that these gentlemen can address, but from 3 points of view, just parroting a little bit of what's been said. Strategically for us as a public-private partnership, number one, you're doing what is first and foremost most important. There has to be a state voice as to how this works, so we've got sort of a tent under which we can collectively work. Secondly, what we need to do is quit apologizing for being California and identifying for our competitors what our problems are. We know what our problems are. We can handle those internally. And instead we start talking again about being the 8th largest economy in the world, the concentration of virtually all of the high-tech innovation, the greatest investment in equity investment, all of those things that are huge. Or locally, more specifically, we have to get better, as Bill had mentioned and others, in that elevator speech about what are the strengths in those assets, speaking from a position of strength, not embarrassment or apology, and more tactically, working that industry sector by industry sector. So yes, we collectively understand sort of viscerally, maybe intellectually, that yes, if you take away an institution as large as Naval Base Ventura County will have mass effects on the region. But being able to break that down industry by industry, what does it mean to manufacturing and construction, as previously mentioned, but even more importantly, what does it mean to the healthcare infrastructure in Ventura County? What does it mean to the finance and insurance industry? Right down to the details, so we can motivate those players, those leaders, not just from the abstract, but from the material point of view of how Naval Base is integrated into their world. We live in a certain irony, and I would leave it with that, but the irony is we understand that we need to protect against encroachment, but that's the physical encroachment. What we need to get better at is talking about the more economic integration and the manner by which that's manifesting in the sector.
You bring up encroachment. If we could talk a little bit about that. Maybe not everyone in the audience is following. There's been some interesting investigatory articles in the Ventura County Star about this. There's a federal government program to actually purchase and set aside properties to avoid encroachment. Can we talk a little bit about the physical encroachment and what other communities are doing and what we're doing and how that's maybe affecting our future for expanding and contracting our military resources? I'll probably start with Bill and Bruce.
Well, I don't know how much more we can really add other than to say encroachment is one of the important things that the DOD looks at. There are military installations around the country where civilization was non-existent when they came into being, many of them in World War II era. But slowly and over time, as the military installations began to be the economic hub for a particular region, more and more people needed to live there, and so more and more infrastructure and more buildings just naturally happened. And so it's important for local communities to be able to recognize that encroachment is an issue for the military, and that we need to be cognizant and engage in dialogue with our military partners when we're planning to expand. I can tell you that currently here in Ventura County, there is a current effort to do a joint land use study, which is basically the community and the military have gotten together and are sitting down and having a conversation about, okay, gee whiz, we see our communities expanding this way over the next 10, 15, 20 years. and the military says, well, we think that we're going to need to expand this way in the next 10 or 15 and 20 years, and so what do those mean, and where can we meet common ground to be able to prevent the least amount of impact on our military installation as we possibly can. That study is they're winding down and should be producing a report sometime in the next 3 to 6 months. And it will be interesting to see what, in fact, they've been able to come up with.
Bruce?
Yeah, I was just going to hit that last point. I think everybody in this room probably, or should be aware of the last point that Bill just made. This is actually going on right now. Encroachment is not being addressed just accidentally and ad hoc. There's a very organized, very rigorous, following a national model, major consultant contractor folks brought in, the planning apparatus of each of the various cities, county, and other institutions are at the table and looking at this. Now, it ain't going to be perfect. None of that sort of stuff is. But it's at least extremely deliberative. It's following a national model, and it's in the consciousness of land use planning in Ventura County. We need to make sure as that report starts to come out and get some airtime, that it's not just the document of the planning professionals, but rather the broader community as represented in this room too.
I'm going to now, I'll just add one point, and that is that I think it's going to be very important upon a lot of weight on the shoulders of Charlie Giacchi and the Governor's Council to organize from Sacramento a unified effort that we haven't seen in the last 20 years from our entire congressional delegation. If there's ever a nonpartisan, if there's ever a bipartisan issue, it's preservation of California's military. And that means we got to get our entire congressional delegation organized, our 2 senators, our governors, and everybody working in that white building in Sacramento. And I think that's really key. But I'm going to open it up now for questions for this panel, please. Yeah, Tony Valente.
Tony Valente, I appreciate everything that these panelists have discussed today, but we're not in a complete vacuum. We have an organization called the Regional Defense Partnership for the 21st Century. And we've been organized way back in the early 1990s, 94. Even though we separate the BRAC from this organization, we are in Washington, we're in Sacramento, San Diego, defending and supporting Naval Base Ventura County. Not only Naval Base Ventura County, but the Air Guard, the 146th Airlift Wing. It has those C-130s out there that we have to use the runway in Point Magoo. If something happens to Point Magoo, the Air Guard is also in danger. We have a team on this Regional Defense Partnership 21st Century. We have elected, we have academia, we have business people, we have a lot of the cities involved. And right now, we have a team that's going back to Washington just to get that visibility and educate the electeds, the Pentagon, on what we're doing out here in California, in Ventura County. So I just wanted to put that plug in for this Regional Defense Partnership for the 21st Century. There's a lot of people in here that are members of that organization. If Mayor Sharkey's still here, he's on his way to Washington, I believe tomorrow. So just to let you know that we're still working pretty hard for Naval Base Ventura County and also the Air Guard base. There are military bases that we need to save in Ventura County for everything that has been said here today. So that's what I'd like to mention.
You bring up a fantastic point. We've kind of missed here a little bit, and that is the work of RDP 21 and what they do. Actually, if you hold on the microphone, Tony, maybe talk a little bit about your experience at RDP 21 through the last BRAC, and what role do they play, what role can they not play, and how can we utilize their expertise and goodwill in preparing the community for whatever happens in the next few years.
Exactly. You know, we can have 3 times the amount of people in here when we get started with the BRAC. My experience is I went through the 95 BRAC, I went through the 2005 BRAC, and we separate that. We have a different organization like the CEDAR operating as the arm of the BRAC. The reason for that is that in our regional defense partnership, we have commanders, Commander of Naval Base Ventura County, and other military that cannot discuss BRAC in that particular venue. So that's why we keep it separate. We want them to stay with regional defense partnership in their void of the BRAC. And we, in here, are the ones that are going to get involved with the BRAC. We need that support. Constant support, constant talking about your work areas, talking about our cities, so there's a lot of work that a lot of volunteers have put in to save the base. And there was times when it was on, and it was off, and it was on, back on again. But we could show the amount